Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be taking a look at mental health.
Ooh.
We're going to be going through this video script called Mental Health Awareness.
Okay.
It's super interesting stuff and honestly really relevant, I think, for pretty much everyone.
For sure.
Right off the bat, they share this stat. 1 in 4 people will experience a mental health challenge in their lifetime.
Wow. 1 in 4.
1 in 4.
Yeah.
So right away, this is something that's going to touch
Absolutely.
a lot of people's lives, whether it's directly or through the people we care about.
Yeah. I mean, I think that really sets the stage for why this deep dive is going to be so important.
I totally agree. So
Well,
let's jump into it.
Yeah, let's do it. So the script opens up with how they define mental health. And it's not just the absence of illness, right? They go way beyond that.
Right. It's not just like, oh, I don't have a diagnosis, so I'm good.
Exactly
It's
right.
way more than that.
They paint a way bigger picture.
It is. It's about a state of well-being. How we think, how we feel, how we act,
Right.
and how all of those things, how they work together, impact our ability to deal with the stuff that life throws our way.
Yeah.
Have good relationships, contribute to our communities.
Yeah, just really like flourishing, not just functioning.
Totally.
Right. And it's something I think a lot of people forget about.
Mm-hmm.
So then the video goes into how we can recognize the signs of mental health challenges.
Okay.
And what I thought was so interesting was how subtle some of the examples were. Like they talk about withdrawing from your friends, having a really hard time concentrating, excessive worrying, stuff like that. Those aren't things that immediately set off alarm bells,
Well, it's not like you see it, you're like, oh my gosh, something's really wrong.
Exactly.
But they are really important. And I think it's interesting because they can be like early warning signs, like the canary in the coal mine.
Oh, I like that.
Like just kind of a signal that, hey, maybe something needs a little attention
Exactly.
in the environment, in our mental environment.
So if we or someone close to us starts showing these signs, is that like cause for immediate concern, or is it more like, just a little...
Well, I mean, it's definitely
Okay.
signal to slow down and kind of listen to what our bodies and minds are telling us.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a full-blown crisis.
Right.
But it is something that, we should look into.
Okay.
We should check in with ourselves or with that person and see what's going on. And I think that goes back to that 1 in 4 statistic,
Yeah.
If it's that common, then we really should make it normal to check in on each other.
For sure.
And be open about it.
Absolutely. And speaking of making it normal, the script really emphasizes this idea of breaking the stigma.
Totally.
Which really starts with each of us, right?
Yeah.
Like just being open and honest about mental health, fostering that sense of kindness and understanding so that people feel safe to talk about their struggles without feeling judged.
Yeah, without that fear of judgment.
And I think that starts with just really basic things, right? Like just being a good listener.
Absolutely.
Not trying to jump in and fix everything or offer unsolicited advice, just really listening to what people are going through.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is just validate what somebody is going through.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of that scene in the video where the friend just sends a simple text.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, how are you really doing? And that can be so powerful.
Yeah.
Just to feel seen and heard.
Absolutely. It's like you said, small actions can have such a big impact.
Totally.
And speaking of reaching out, the script also talks about, seeking help when it's needed.
Yeah.
And they actually frame it as a sign of strength, which I love.
I love that too, because I think for so long, there's been this idea that it's a sign of weakness.
Totally.
But it's not.
It takes a lot of courage.
It really does.
To admit that you need help.
Yeah, it's like if you had a physical injury,
right,
you wouldn't think twice about going to the doctor.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Mental health is no different.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
And there are so many resources available, therapists, support groups, hotlines.
It's really reassuring to know that there are options out there.
Absolutely. And finding the right resource for you might take a little bit of exploration.
Okay.
But, it's kind of like finding the perfect pair of shoes, right?
I like that, yeah.
Sometimes you have to try on a couple different pairs before you find the one that fits just right.
But where would you suggest someone start it if they're feeling really overwhelmed and they don't even know where to begin?
I mean, I think a really good place to start is your primary care doctor.
Okay.
They can offer referrals to mental health professionals.
Okay.
Or even just connect you with resources in your area.
Okay.
And there are online directories, too, that can be really helpful, just as a starting point.
That makes sense. Those are some great tips.
Yeah.
But it's not just about seeking help for ourselves, though, right?
Okay.
The script also talks about how important it is to support others who might be struggling.
Yeah, and that's tough sometimes.
It is tough.
That's where I think things get a little bit trickier.
Definitely. And this is something I think a lot of people can relate to.
For sure.
And this is where we all have a responsibility, right?
Absolutely. It's about being really mindful of the language that we use.
Okay.
You know, avoiding phrases like just snap out of it or just be positive.
Yeah.
Those can actually be really hurtful.
Yeah, it's almost like dismissing
Exactly.
what they're going through.
Exactly. And instead of...
Like, it's so simple to just fix.
Right.
But it's not that easy.
It's not.
Right.
And so instead of saying, what's wrong with you, try something like, what's going on? Or how can I support you?
Yeah, it's just a small tweak.
In how you phrase things.
But it can make such a difference.
Absolutely.
You know, it shows that you're there for them, you're listening, and you want to help.
Yeah, it's about being that supportive presence, even if you don't always have the right words to say.
Exactly. Sometimes you don't need words.
Yeah.
You just need to be there.
Exactly. And, you know, thinking about this, it reminds me of a time when a friend of mine was going through something really rough.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to say, so I just baked her some cookies. And she later told me that that small act just really helped her feel loved and supported.
That's so sweet.
Yeah.
I love that.
And I think the script does a great job of offering practical tips like that. Like encouraging people to seek help, but doing it in a way that's supportive, not pushy.
Right.
And just being patient, because healing takes time.
Absolutely. There's no quick fix.
Yeah, exactly.
When it comes to mental health.
And that brings us to this last thing that the script really emphasizes, and that's self-care.
Now, it's not all bubble baths and face masks.
Right.
Although those are great, too.
They have their place.
But it's really about those fundamental things.
Yeah.
Like getting enough sleep, eating healthy, moving our bodies, doing things that we actually enjoy.
Yeah, it's about building a strong foundation for well-being.
Yeah.
You know, think of it like building a house.
Okay.
If the foundation's shaky, everything else is going to be unstable.
That's a great analogy. And what I love is that they go beyond just listing those things, you know.
Yeah.
They actually hint at why those things are so good for our mental health. So, for example, they mention exercise, which we all know it's good for us physically.
Right.
But the script talks about how it actually impacts our minds as well.
Yeah, that's what's so fascinating, right?
Yeah.
There's actually science behind it.
Yeah, tell me more about that.
Well, studies have shown that exercise increases levels of BDNF in the brain.
BDNF?
Yeah, it's this protein that's super important for brain health.
Okay.
So think of it as like fertilizer for your brain.
Okay.
Helping it grow and adapt.
So it's not just about
Yeah.
physical fitness, it's actually about brain health.
Absolutely. And it can be like a natural mood booster too.
Really?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And they also talk about sleep in the script.
Yes.
And we always talk about, you know, getting enough sleep for energy and for focus. But how does that actually affect our mental health?
Well, getting enough sleep is essential for regulating our mood.
Okay.
When we're sleep deprived, our brains just aren't as good at processing emotions.
Interesting.
And studies have shown that even one night of bad sleep can make us more irritable and anxious.
Wow, just one night.
Just one night.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So it's not just about avoiding that groggy feeling in the morning.
Yeah, it's about taking care of
your mental health.
Emotional well-being.
Yeah.
Wow.
And healthy eating is another one.
Makes sense. You know, I think we all know that food fuels our bodies.
Yeah.
But it also has a huge impact on our minds.
Yeah, how so?
Well, what we eat directly impacts our brain chemistry.
Oh, wow.
And how our brain functions.
Okay.
So a diet that's rich in fruits and vegetables, whole grains, you know, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
That gives our brains the nutrients they need to work their best.
Okay.
On the other hand, if you're eating a lot of processed foods, sugar, unhealthy fats, that can actually impair your brain function.
Really?
Yeah.
So those late night cravings for chips and ice cream might not be the best idea.
They might not be doing you any favors.
Not doing me any favors.
No.
Got it. Noted.
So I think what's really cool about the way the script presents self-care is that it's not just about, you know, pampering yourself.
Right.
It's about being proactive. It's about building resilience so that when challenges come your way, you're ready for them.
Yeah, so it's not about fixing things when they're broken. It's about just having those good habits in place from the start.
It's like going for regular checkups.
Okay.
Instead of waiting until you have a medical emergency.
Right.
By prioritizing self-care,
Yeah.
we're giving ourselves the tools to navigate all of those challenges that life inevitably throws our way.
And it doesn't have to be complicated.
Right.
Like, it's not about making these huge overhauls to your life.
No.
It's about those small,
Yeah.
sustainable changes that add up over time. It's
Basically.
like choosing a piece of fruit
Yeah.
instead of that candy bar.
Or taking 5 minutes to stretch,
Yeah.
breathe deeply.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those little things can make a big difference.
It's really empowering to think that we have so much control
Totally.
over our mental well-being.
Yeah.
And speaking of control, one thing that really stood out to me in the video is this idea of breaking the silence around mental health.
Oh, for sure.
It's been a taboo topic for so long.
Yeah, like we're supposed to whisper about it.
Yeah, and that just breeds shame.
Absolutely.
It can be so isolating.
Like carrying this heavy weight all alone.
Mm.
And it doesn't have to be that way.
It doesn't, and the script really challenges that, right? They
Yeah.
encourage us to be brave and share our stories and to listen with empathy when other people do the same. It's about changing the narrative
Definitely.
from one of judgment and silence to one of understanding and compassion.
Totally.
But that can feel really daunting, right?
It can.
Especially if we've always been told to keep these things to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some practical ways that we can contribute to that shift, both for ourselves and the people around us?
Well, I think one of the most important things is to be mindful of the language that we use.
Okay.
We already talked about ditching phrases like snap out of it,
Yeah.
but it goes even deeper than that.
Okay.
Like, throwing around clinical diagnoses casually, like saying, oh, I'm so OCD about something. It's not really OCD. That actually minimizes the experiences of people who actually live with those conditions.
Yeah.
And it perpetuates this idea that mental health is something to joke about.
It's like you said, words have power.
They really do.
And we need to be respectful of people's lived experiences
Yeah, absolutely.
and not trivialize them.
Yeah. And another thing to watch out for is using language that implies blame or shame.
Okay.
Like, instead of saying, what's wrong with you, try, what's going on?
Right.
Or how can I support you?
Yeah, just that small shift in how
Right.
you phrase things can make such a difference.
Totally. And I think those are some really practical,
Yeah.
actionable tips for creating a more supportive environment.
For sure. And it really highlights how we can all play a part
Absolutely.
in making things better.
Yeah.
But what about those times when,
Yeah.
self-care and supportive words just aren't enough?
Right.
Like, when do we actually need to seek professional help?
Yeah, that's a great question.
The script touches on this a little bit,
It does.
but I think it's worth diving a little deeper.
I agree.
So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's important to remember that
Mhm.
while self-care and support from loved ones are incredibly valuable,
Yeah.
there are times when professional guidance is absolutely essential.
Okay.
Like, if someone is experiencing severe symptoms,
Mhm.
like really bad anxiety or depression, that just won't go away.
Yeah.
Or if they're having thoughts of harming themselves or others,
Right. Those are serious.
those are serious red flags.
Yeah.
And we can't minimize that.
Yeah, we can.
Even if someone isn't experiencing those extreme symptoms,
Mm.
if their mental health is impacting their everyday life in a really significant way,
Right there.
that's also a good indicator that professional help could be really beneficial.
Yeah, I think that's something a lot of people struggle with.
They do.
Right. Is like knowing when to actually seek help.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It is.
So I'm glad we're talking about that.
Me too.
And, it's like you were saying earlier, seeking help isn't a sign of weakness.
It's
It's a sign
It's strength.
of strength.
It's self-awareness.
Yeah,
It's taking control of your well-being.
exactly.
And sometimes we just need a little bit of guidance from people who are trained to help us.
Yeah, it's like going to a mechanic when your car breaks down.
Exactly.
Right.
You wouldn't try to fix a complex engine problem if you didn't have any expertise.
Yeah, you're not going to YouTube
Yeah.
how to rebuild your transmission.
Exactly. And just like with physical health, there are different therapists who specialize in different areas.
Right.
So it's important to find someone who's a good fit for your needs.
That makes a lot of sense.
It does.
And speaking of resources, the script also provides a helpline number
Oh, yes.
for people who need immediate assistance.
That's so important.
It is, and we'll be sure to include that number in the show notes so everybody has easy access to it.
I love that.
And I think it really speaks to that overall message of the script, which is that none of us are alone in this.
Absolutely.
There are people who care. Yes.
There are resources available,
Yeah.
and there's a whole movement
Right
to
there.
break the stigma around mental health.
Totally.
So as we kind of delve deeper into that,
Mhm.
I'm wondering, Do you think there are any potential downsides
Ooh, interesting question.
to all this openness about mental health?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Does the script address that at all?
It doesn't really go into that, and it's something that people are talking about a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, increased awareness is great,
Right.
but some people are worried that all this sharing online
Yeah.
can sometimes lead to mental health issues being trivialized.
That's a good point.
And that's a valid concern, right?
Yeah.
We need to find a balance
Yeah.
between being open
Mhm.
and being responsible
Right.
in how we represent these issues.
So it's not about shutting down the conversation.
Exactly.
It's about making sure we're approaching it with sensitivity
With sensitivity.
and awareness. Yeah, it's not about reducing these complex experiences
Yeah.
to sound bites or trends.
Right.
It's about having real, authentic conversations
Yeah.
that promote genuine understanding and support.
And as we're talking about this, the complexity of mental health and everyone's individual experiences, one thing that really stands out to me from this script is how interconnected it all is.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, our own mental well-being is totally tied to the well-being of our community.
No, for sure.
And when we prioritize mental health,
Yes.
not just for ourselves, but for the people around us, it creates this ripple effect.
It does. Like a rising tide lifts all boats.
I love that.
Right. When we create a culture of understanding,
Yeah.
compassion, and support,
Yeah.
we're creating a world where everyone has a better chance of thriving.
Absolutely.
And that's what makes the final message of the script so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Together, we can build a mentally healthier world.
Yeah, it's a call to action.
It is.
It's inviting all of us to think about how we can be part of that.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't have to be some grand gesture.
Right. No, not at all.
It can be those everyday acts
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
kindness and understanding and support.
Just like we saw in that powerful scene in the video,
Oh, yeah.
where people are holding up those signs that say, "You are not alone."
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
just reaching out to a friend and saying, "How are you really doing?"
Those little things can be so powerful.
They can make someone feel seen and heard
Exact.
and remind them that they have support.
And it shifts that narrative, right?
It's-
From one of isolation and stigma to one of connection and hope.
Absolutely. And that shift can be so empowering.
Yeah.
It can help people feel more comfortable seeking help when they need it and feel supported in their journey to well-being.
And that's a great segue into the next part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
because we're going to be talking more about those support systems and resources.
Awesome.
So before we move on, I just want to emphasize that, while mental health challenges are very real
They are.
and can be really, really tough to navigate, there is hope.
Absolutely.
There are people who care. There are resources available,
Yeah.
and there's this growing movement to make the world a place
Yeah,
where mental well-being is prioritized and celebrated.
for sure.
So stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive,
Cool.
where we'll
Yeah.
be talking about those support systems
Yeah.
and resources
Awesome.
in more detail.
Sounds good. Yeah, and it's not about, just pretending everything's okay.
Right.
It's about acknowledging that these struggles are real and creating space for people to talk about them openly and honestly.
So we talked about those support systems, but when is it time to bring in the pros? Like, when does self-care and support from friends and family, when is that not enough?
That's a really important question.
Yeah.
Because while those things are so important, there are definitely times when you need to bring in the experts.
Okay.
Like if you're dealing with really intense anxiety or depression, or if you're having thoughts of hurting yourself or others,
Yeah,
those are really serious situations.
definitely.
And you need to reach out for help right away.
Like, those are not things to mess around with.
No, absolutely not.
And even if it's not that extreme, if your mental health is seriously messing with your everyday life, that's also a sign that professional help could be a good idea.
Yeah, like if it's preventing you from doing the things you need to do
Right.
or enjoying your life,
Exactly.
that's when it's time to reach out.
And like we said before,
Yeah.
reaching out is not a sign of weakness.
No, it's a sign of strength.
Yeah.
It means you're taking care of yourself.
It means you're prioritizing your well-being.
Exactly.
And sometimes we just need a little extra help to do that.
Absolutely. And there's no shame in that.
Not at all.
And just like with physical health, if you break your leg, you go to the doctor.
Yeah.
If you're struggling with your mental health, it's okay to seek help from a professional.
And luckily, there are so many different types of professionals out there.
There are.
Therapists, counselors, psychiatrists.
Yeah.
So you can find someone who's a good fit for you and your needs.
Exactly. And speaking of resources, the script also mentioned a helpline number
Oh, yeah.
for people who need immediate support.
Yeah, that's so important.
It is, and we'll make sure to put that in the show notes.
Definitely.
So everyone has easy access to it.
So you never know when you or someone you know might need it.
Right.
Exactly.
It's always good to have those resources handy.
It's like having a first aid kit,
Totally.
just in case.
Exactly.
And I think that ties back to the message of the script, which is that we're all in this together.
We are.
You're not alone.
There are people who care.
There are resources available.
And there's a whole movement dedicated to changing the way we think and talk about mental health.
Exactly. And that's super encouraging.
It is.
But as we talk about all this, I can't help but wonder if there are any potential downsides to being so open about mental health.
Oh, that's a really interesting question.
Yeah, is there a risk of oversharing or maybe even trivializing these issues?
Yeah, that's a valid concern.
Does the script touch on that at all?
It doesn't really go into that, but it's definitely something to think about.
Yeah, because on one hand, we want to encourage people to talk about their experiences,
That's so.
break down the stigma. But on the other hand, we don't want to make light of these very real challenges.
Right. It's about finding that balance.
Yeah, finding that sweet spot.
Yeah, between raising awareness and being sensitive.
And making sure that the conversations are respectful.
Exactly.
And not just turning into like a trend or something.
Yeah, because these are serious issues that deserve to be treated with care.
Absolutely.
So I think it's great to be open, but we also need to be mindful of how we're talking about these things.
And to circle back to what we were talking about earlier, about the interconnectedness of it all, it's like our own mental health is so tied to the mental health of our community.
It really is.
Like, if we create a culture of support and understanding, it benefits everyone.
Absolutely. It's like that saying, a rising tide lifts all boats.
Exactly. So the more we do to prioritize mental health, both for ourselves and for the people around us, the better off we'll all be.
And that's what makes the ending of this script so powerful.
Yeah, tell me about that.
It says, together we can build a mentally healthier world. And that's a message that really resonates with me.
Me too.
It's a call to action.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we all have a role to play.
And it doesn't have to be some big, grand gesture.
No, not at all.
It can start with small acts of kindness, like just checking in on a friend.
Yeah.
Offering a listening ear.
Or even just a smile.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's all it takes to make a difference.
And like we saw in that scene in the video.
Oh, yeah.
Just holding up a sign that says, "You are not alone." That can be so powerful. It can make someone feel seen and heard.
Exactly.
And remind them that they're not alone in this.
And it shifts that whole narrative from one of isolation to one of connection and hope.
And I think that's a perfect place to transition to the final part of our deep dive.
Okay.
Where we're going to talk about specific actions that we can all take to promote mental well-being, both for ourselves and for others.
I'm excited for that.
Yeah. So stay tuned.
All right, so we're back.
We are back and ready to wrap up our deep dive into this super insightful video script on mental health awareness.
It has been such an interesting conversation.
It really has. And I think what I appreciate most about this script is how they balance, the serious stuff, the real challenges, with a message of hope and empowerment.
Absolutely. They don't sugarcoat it.
No.
But they also make it clear that healing and support are possible.
Yeah, and that there are things we can do to make things better.
Totally.
So I think this deep dive is really valuable for anyone.
I agree.
Whether you're personally going through something or supporting someone who is, or just wanting to learn more and be a better advocate.
Yeah, knowledge is power, right?
Absolutely.
The more we understand about mental health,
the
better equipped we are to break down stigma and support each other.
So before we wrap up, I want to recap some key takeaways from our conversation. First and foremost, mental health is a universal experience.
Totally.
It affects every single one of us.
Directly or indirectly.
Exactly. And recognizing that is so important. It helps break down the idea that it's only a small group of people who are affected.
Right. Like it's something other people deal with.
Exactly.
But that's just not true.
It's not. And because it's so widespread,
Yeah.
We need to be more aware of the signs, not just in ourselves, but in the people around us.
Absolutely. And like we talked about,
Yeah.
those signs can be really subtle,
Yeah, they can.
but they're still important.
They are.
So pay attention.
And if you notice those signs in yourself or someone else,
Yeah.
remember that seeking help is not a weakness.
It's a sign of strength.
It's a sign of strength. And thankfully, there are so many resources available.
There are.
You know, therapists, support groups, hotlines.
You don't have to go through this alone.
Exactly.
There's help out there.
And we can all do our part to
Yep.
create a more supportive environment
Absolutely.
by practicing empathy and active listening.
Like we talked about earlier, sometimes just a small gesture of kindness can make a huge difference.
It can, and it's about creating a space
Yeah.
where people feel safe to open up.
Yeah. Without fear of judgment.
Exactly. And aside from supporting others, we also need to take care of ourselves.
Yes. Self-care is crucial.
It is. And that means getting enough sleep, eating healthy foods, moving our bodies.
Yeah. All those things we know we should be doing.
Yeah. But we don't always prioritize.
Right. But they really do make a difference.
And let's not forget about the language we use.
Oh, that's so important.
It is. Words have power.
They do.
And we need to be mindful of that.
We need to choose words that promote understanding and respect.
Exactly. And avoid language that perpetuates stigma or shame.
Totally. It's about creating a culture of compassion, not judgment.
And this deep dive has really shown me how important it is for all of us to be involved.
Yeah.
It's not just the responsibility of, mental health professionals or policymakers.
Right.
It's something we can all contribute to.
Absolutely. We all have a role to play.
So as we wrap up this episode,
Yeah.
I want to leave you with this question from the video script.
Okay.
What's one small step you can take today, either for your own mental well-being?
Yeah. Or to support someone else.
It's a good question to think about.
It is, because even small actions can make a difference.
They can, and when we all do our part, we can create a ripple effect.
Absolutely.
And build a more mentally healthy world.
And remember, you're not alone.
You're not.
If you're struggling, please reach out for help.
Yeah, and don't forget to check the show notes for that helpline number.
Yes, we'll have all those resources linked there.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive
Been a pleasure.
into mental health awareness.
Yes, it has.
We hope you learned something new and feel empowered to make a difference.
Absolutely.
Take care of yourselves and each other.
Until next time.